Welcome to Harvest Mission Community Church. You are listening to one of our sermons.
And so we're excited today because we're going to be talking about go. And so today I wanted to start off with the question of when was the last time you were in awe? That you were looking at something, or maybe you were in a moment and you were just in awe of what was happening, or you were in awe. I mean, sometimes people, when they meet a celebrity, they're in awe and they're starstruck and they're looking at the celebrity in such a way where, I mean, sometimes it's borderline idolatry, right? But, or some of us, it's in the midst of nature. And we're looking outwards and we see mountains and God's creation, and we see all that God is doing, and we see all these things come to play, and we look at it, and there is a sense of awe that comes from that. I wanted to start off with a video, and this is a video that was from many years ago. But it is a video where this person, he experiences something in nature, and he's looking at it, and he realizes this is an amazing thing. And so the first thing he ends up doing is to take a video of it, because I believe he wanted to share with more people. So let's watch this video. All right, a little bit funny, comical. But one thing that I got out of this is that there is this sense of awe. He was just mesmerized by this rainbow. First, he sees a double rainbow, and he's like, oh my gosh. And he can't contain his emotions. And at one point, he's like, there's a triple rainbow. What's going on? And it seems like this phenomena that he's never experienced before. But in that sense of awe, that you see a range and gamut of emotions, anything from excitement and seeing that, wow, there's something incredible happening before my eyes, to almost this sense of uncontainable emotion where at the end, I don't know if you noticed, but his voice starts to break down and he's about to cry. And he's just so in awe of what is happening. And we might be thinking to ourselves, how does this have anything to do with go? And I'm going to connect the dots for us, but the thing that we see from this person is that he couldn't contain it. And so he recorded this video, and I believe in hopes to share it with many people. And he wanted people to see this incredible thing. And so even for us today, are we mesmerized? Are we in awe of God? Are we in awe of all that he is? Do we even understand and know that this is the God that we serve? That God is so much greater than a double rainbow. He's so much bigger. He's so much more awesome. And if we know that, and if this person is reacting in such a way, then how should that lead us to respond? How should that lead us to be able to live our lives and to say, God, I'm willing to do whatever. So for today, the one thing is when we know God is holy, we will go and spread his glory. When we know God is holy, we will go and spread his glory. We're going to be going into the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 1 to 8. And so if we could turn over there, I want to read the scripture for us. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood at the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having his hands having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, "Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for." And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" Then I said, "Here I am, send me." This past Friday, we also talked about this word hanini, and we were going to see it in this Isaiah passage too. And we've also been in that, it was this posture of "here I am." And today is going to be sort of a continuation from the prayer gathering, but I want to delve into deeper the details of what this account is and how God's holiness drives us to be able to respond and to go and to spread his glory. And so the first point I have is the realization of God's holiness. So I want us to first look at what Isaiah describes. The first thing that we see is the Lord was sitting upon the throne, high and lifted up. Secondly, the train of his robe filled the temple. Third, there were two seraphim and calling out, "Holy, holy, holy," to one another. Third, we see that the foundation of the threshold shook at the voice of the seraphims. And then lastly, the house was filled with smoke. So when I was thinking about this, it was a little bit hard for me to imagine. And so I thought it would be good to maybe start looking into some pictures, and it will give us a better idea. And these are, of course, interpretations, and hopefully, this isn't exactly what it looked like, but I hope it gives us a sense of what it might look like. And so if we could turn to the first picture here. So if you see, there's two seraphim. We see Isaiah on the bottom, and then we see God, and sort of God is this ethereal being. We don't know how to fully depict him, but here's a picture. It seems very pretty, very artsy, right? And so here's one of the pictures. The next one, this seems a little bit more, I don't know, just lots of colors, lots going on, and we see seraphim. And I don't know if we've ever seen what an angel, if we were correctly to draw it, what it would look like. But actually, angels are pretty scary-looking beings. And so they have all these eyes on them. But here's another picture of just Isaiah and what he could have seen. You see the train, the robe of God just going through all out. And then it's this almost vision picture that we see here. The next one is a little bit more nature-y, and we see clouds, and then we see two seraphim that are a little bit smaller, but this is just another idea of what his vision might have looked like. And God is this big light at the top. And then lastly, we have a more heavenly looking picture. This looks like something I would imagine heaven to look like. And so we have pillars, we have these angels that are on the sides, a stairway that leads to God's throne. So when we look at these pictures, I hope it gives us a sense of what Isaiah had seen in front of him. That this was a glorious sight. He was in awe. He was almost speechless probably for the first couple of minutes looking at all this. And it was probably really hard for him to digest. And I wanted us to digest this picture because I hope it gives us a sense of God's magnificence, that he is mesmerizing, how awesome he is, that it will give us a sense of who God is. And even if we were to look at him, that this might be just a glimpse of what we would have seen and what Isaiah would have seen. The second thing I wanted to turn our attention to is the word holy. If we look at I believe it's verse 4, the word holy is repeated by the seraphim 3 times. Whenever you see something repeated multiple times, and especially three is this number of perfection. And so it really highlighted holy. Like, this is who God is, but it's like holy, but then there's like even greater holy. And so that's what this repetition of holy, 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 when the seraphims were saying that it is conveying to the people and conveying to Isaiah. If we look at the word holy, and in its definition, it means sacred or set apart. So it's something that is otherworldly, that we would not even be able to comprehend, because holiness is to be set apart. Sometimes I think about, like if I were to think about a group of athletes, there's all these athletes, but then if you're in the top 1%, the NBA is like being holy because you're set apart. You're different than everybody else, right? That's not exactly what it is, but that's how I imagine it to be, right? Like there's all these people, there's all these things, but at the end of the day, there are these people who are set apart, who are different. They're built different. God is referred to the Holy One or described as holy over 50 times in the Bible. So I'm going to show us some of the verses, and I want us to follow along and read the yellow portions with me. So while the law was being given to the Israelites, God says in Leviticus chapter 11, verse 44a, "For I am the Lord your God, consecrate yourselves, therefore, and be holy, for I am holy." We see in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 2, or chapter 2, verse 2, in Hannah's prayer, "There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you. There is no rock like our God." And then in a similar way to Isaiah's vision, in Revelation chapter 4, verse 8, it says, "And the four living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes around and within. And day and night they never cease to say, 'Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come.'" I also want to do a little bit of research of how different people, pastors, authors, Christian authors, theologians, view God as holy. And what does that really mean? And so according to authors and pastors Richard Blackaby and Henry T. Blackaby, they say God's holiness throughout the Bible describes his absolute moral perfection and complete separation from sin. God is entirely pure, without blemish, unspotted, and perfectly consistent. According to author and pastor Benjamin M. Skog, God's holiness means that he is completely separate from sin or the taint of sin, and righteous at all times. He does not act in a way that is unholy or sinful. God will not tolerate any hint of imperfection, impurity, or sin, and must punish sin. He will never make a mistake. And I'm reminded that, as I said, that athlete is built different. God is built different. He's just different. We can't compare him to anything. We can't imagine him to be anything. He's just different all around. And one of the things that as I was studying this, as I was chewing on this, and I thought about the moments where God revealed himself to people. When Moses saw him on the Mount Sinai, it was amazing. He looks at God and he's like, "I can't be here. I can't be in your sight. How am I supposed to be here? You're glorious. You're a holy God. How am I even to stand in front of you?" We see Isaiah's response. He says, "Woe is me. I'm a man of unclean lips. How am I to be in your presence. And what is so sad about today's church, and I believe many of us struggle with this, I know for myself I struggle with this, is sometimes we treat God like a genie. We just think, oh, like God's this little cute toy that I could put in my pocket, and every single time I'm going through something difficult, I'll pull it out and just say, God, please help me. But we don't realize that God is this holy being, that he doesn't need to help us. He doesn't need to help us to overcome different things, that our God is so much greater. But we degrade him. We almost look at him as maybe like a Chinese house god, that he's just this little statue and he's just chilling up in heaven and he doesn't mean that much and he can't do that much. We degrade him to be seen as this, oh, like God loves me. That's all I need from God. But what kind of God is that? If God just loves you, we should just find another person who will love us. And I feel like this is what's disturbing about the church today, that our view of God is so low. This is what's so disturbing about the church, because the way that we enter into his presence is not that I'm coming into the presence of God. I'm coming into the presence of, oh, this other being. He's nice and cuddly. I see this Jesus picture, right? He's stroking the lamb and sheep. It's like, oh, so nice. That's the Jesus I know. That's the Jesus I've come to know. But we don't see that when Jesus comes back, we see in his returning that he's going to come and he's looking like this majestic being. He's coming on a white horse and he's going to be ready to overcome darkness, to press against the gates of hell. That's the God we serve, everyone. That if we were to even spend one day, just a couple of seconds in his sight, we would all be dead. Each of us carries that sin. And we even see through the Bible that there were priests who had sinned. They went into the veil, into this place, the most holy place. And what happened to them? They would tie these shackles around this chain of the priest because they didn't know by God's glory that this person might just fall dead and they will have to drag him out. But again, we always return back to, man, like, I'll just, serve God when it's comfortable. I'll serve God when, God doesn't deserve my life. Like, he's lucky that, me, with all the things I got in my, 9-to-5 work job and all the things that I got to do for my college career, all the efforts I need to put into things, God should be happy I came to church. God should be happy that I came to this place. Because ultimately, he doesn't deserve me to be here, but I'm doing him a service. But that's where we got it all twisted. That we forget God is this, he shouldn't even be in our presence. He shouldn't even want to even commune with us. He shouldn't want to be even having a relationship with us. And he's never needed us. He's fully satisfied within himself. He's fully able to experience everything he needs. He is love, even as we talked about that first week. And sometimes it also just irks me a bit when, and I hope it bothers us too, when sometimes we just give just good enough. Because all of our lives, we've lived in this culture that says, hey, just do well enough, put enough time to get that A. But when we look at God, we're never able to give him more than enough. We're never willing to make those sacrifices. But if we really believe that the God we serve is the God that is in the Bible, that is God, Yahweh. He is the most holy. He's Alpha, He's Omega, He's beginning, He's end. He's the first and the last. He's all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipresent. Then it should be our privilege to say, God, I want to serve you. It should be our privilege just to know that we could gather together as a church and experience His presence. So how about us today, church? Do we see God as the supreme God over all things, that we are undeserving to be in the presence of? Or do we belittle God? Do we see God as something so small and we feel like we're doing a good thing for Him? I pray that for us, it would be never said of us that we have a low view of God in our church. That when people would look into Harvest Mission Community Church, when people look into our local church, they'll say, this church knows that God is holy. Quickly, the second point is the response to God's holiness. In verses 5 to 8, we see two responses from Isaiah. The first is the response in confession. We'll quickly read verse 5 again. Isaiah says, "Woe is me, for I am lost. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." There's two parts of Isaiah's confession. The first is personal uncleanliness or uncleanness. He recognizes that personally he is unable to be in the presence of God. He shouldn't be able to be. He recognizes that God is God and He is so low, that he's experienced God as this holy God, and he can't imagine that he's able to be in the presence of God. He also sees the brokenness of people, that Isaiah, he was amongst the Israelite people, and he saw how short they have fallen from God's glory, from God's holiness. But the amazing thing is, although God is so holy, that He's so great, God doesn't leave Isaiah in that state. But in His grace and mercy, in the fullness of who He is, He decides, and the seraphim comes and touches Isaiah's mouth with the coal. And with this coal, it was representative. If we look back, or if we look ahead, even in Matthew, Jesus says, it's not what you put into your mouth that is unclean, but it's what comes out of it. And so the mouth is a very powerful instrument that we have as people, and is representative of cleanliness or uncleanliness. And that's where the seraphim touches and takes away the guilt, and Isaiah's sins are atoned for. If we don't understand God's holiness, we won't understand the magnitude of this. If we don't understand God's holiness, we won't understand the magnitude of Jesus' sacrifice. If we don't understand God's holiness, then we don't understand how much of a privilege it is for us to be here this morning. And I hope that us as a church will be able to be seeing God in all of His holiness, that we shouldn't be in His presence. But we also see the fullness of His love and grace on the cross, and we say, God, what a wretched man I am. But thank you for letting me into your presence. The second way we see Isaiah respond is the response to the call. In verse 8, the voice of the Lord speaks and says, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" One thing I want us to notice within that passage is actually God is not calling Isaiah. He does not say, "Isaiah, I want to send you. Will you go for me?" What does he say? He's having a conversation to himself. This must have looked really funny in front of Isaiah. I don't know how the Trinity will look physically, but it's just like, imagine God the Son, God the Spirit, God the Father. It's like, hey, all right, we gotta work something out. Okay, we gotta send somebody. And in that dialogue, that internal dialogue, he says, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And that's so interesting, right? He says, "Whom shall I send?" And then he says, "Who will go for us?" It is not directed at anyone, and I believe that this is very intentional from God. God is not a random God. He wasn't just like, all right, like, let's try to come up with a question to put in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. He's not random like that, but he did this very purposefully. And I believe why he did it is, one, he wants to understand the willingness of the people. Two, he wants to understand if it is a surrendered heart. Three, is that he's recognizing a need now, and God is wanting to send someone before him. And fourth, it's a relational component. He doesn't just send people. He doesn't force us. He doesn't say, "Bob, go." He doesn't tell Peter, "You must go." No, he's a relational. He's not going to force you to do anything. He loves you. He wants you to enjoy the fullness of what he wants you to step into, but he's not going to force you into that. And so he gives us a choice. He gives out this why call. He says, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And we see Isaiah respond to the question with, "Here I am, send me." I knew the "here I am" part from prayer gathering. By the way, let's just give a praise to God of all the things that he did through the prayer gathering. I was just blessed by how God even used Joanna to just be able to lead us into his heart. That was just such a powerful time. But that "send me" part, I believe, is like shalach. Like Hebrew has that emphasis, right? And so it's halini shalach. So this is what Isaiah responds to God with. And I was thinking about this. I was pondering, and I was trying to mull over. Why is Isaiah saying, "Here I am, send me"? Yes, he recognizes that the people are far from God's heart, but I also believe that he noticed that the people were choosing that way. And if you further look into this, the Israelite people, they already knew God. So why is Isaiah going to these people? Why is Isaiah going to the Israelites? They already know God, but they didn't want God. So what's the point? And I believe fundamentally in our hearts, what isn't the driving force for us to go and to make disciples of all nations is because we feel bad about people not knowing the gospel and that they're dying. If that is the main focus of our hearts, if that is the main reason why we are going, it's going to fail us. It makes me remember the story of a pastor. His name is, I believe, Pastor Paris Reedhead. He decided He's an American pastor. He decided he wants to be a missionary. He wants to go out. So he decides to go to this country believing that that's where God sent him. And as he's in that place, he starts evangelizing. And one thing he realized is that these people already know God, but they hate God. These people already know that God exists, but they didn't want anything to do with him. So he went into his place and he was resting for the night, and he prayed to God and he said, God, why did you send me here? These people already know God and they don't want to know, they don't want anything to do with you. They already know you exist. Why did you send me here? What's the point? Why am I here? And he heard as clear as anything before, and he felt like God was just saying and pressing into his heart. And what he believed that God was saying to him is that I did not send you there just for these people, that they would have a better life, that they would be able to go to heaven. But I sent you there for my glory. I sent you there because I want you to be there to spread my glory. And out of that reasoning of spreading his glory, and because of the death that he died on the cross for us, he said to this pastor, do I not deserve the reward of my suffering? That I love these people. I don't want them to suffer. I want them to be in fullness of relationship with me. And that's why I sent you, for my glory. It's not because these people didn't know me. It's not because these people are choosing or they had a choice, but I chose to send you there for my glory. And for Isaiah, I believe that it's not because he felt bad for the people that he sent. He decided to say, here I am, send me. It is not because he found out a new answer and the key to life, and that's why he felt like he had to go to Isaiah or Israelites and to tell them about this. But I believe that Isaiah saw the holiness of God, and he said, the way to spread God's glory is to share about who God is and to be a prophet for him. So how about for us? It cannot be because we feel bad about people. Yes, that is a part of it, that we love them. But what comes before the greatest commandment of loving people? It says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That the precedence of loving people is not for us to just love people better, but the precedence is that we have to first love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. It cannot be because we feel bad that they've never heard something. If it starts there and we go somewhere and we tell them about the gospel and they don't change, we're going to give up. But if it's about God's glory, then we're willing to stick it out because we realize our lives, everything inside of us is about God's glory. It can't also be because we found a new ticket to life, that somehow this is going to be the best life ever and we want to invite everyone in. Yes, that is a byproduct of following Christ, but it cannot be a prime product. It cannot be the first thing. the first thing always has to be God's glory. We go because God is glorified when we obey and make our lives much about him. We go because God is magnified in our lives when we spread his glory. We go because God loves his people and wants to bring them to his own. At the end of Isaiah's life, you know what happened? There isn't a specific clear account of what had happened at the end of Isaiah's life, but historical accounts would say there was a king that he was serving. He prophesied something over that king. The king did not like it, and he sawed him in two. And that sometimes will be the cost of us going. And if it's just because we love people, sometimes that's not going to carry us to that point of death. But if we know that God loves us, that he is glorified in this, we would be willing to do whatever it takes so that his glory might be known. And the gospel is this. Remember the coal that was taken from the seraphim? That coal came from the altar. And what that altar represents is a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ. That through that coal, Isaiah was able to be removed from his guilt and atoned for his sin. But that wasn't God's ultimate plan. The altar was just a foreshadow of Christ's death on the cross. That God didn't send a coal to save all of us. God sent his one and only Son to save all of us. That he doesn't ask us to go out of some moral obligation, but he asks us to go because he has gone first. That Jesus came and died on the cross for us, that we are unable to live up to his standards, his morality, that we would never be able to encounter his holiness and be in his sight. But because he wanted a relationship with us, he came, he went, he sent his one and only Son. That although we didn't want anything to do with him, he said, I love you. I love you, child. I love you, son. I love you, daughter. And that's why I'm coming. That's why I'm going. That's why I'm sending my Son to you. And he decided to obey even to the point of death on the cross. That he left heaven and decided to go and save us, that we might have a relationship with him. So once again, the one thing is when we know God is holy, we will go and spread his glory. The first next step for us, and the two things that we'll provide within our HMCC's transformation pathways, is that one, we want us to commit to witness to one pre-Christian. Just think about one person. That as you experience God's holiness, his love in your life, that now you want to go and share about his love with this person. Secondly, is to participate in a missions or service project. And this is a part of our name, Harvest Mission Community Church. And we believe in doing missions as we are on God's mission, because it's ultimately about his glory going to the ends of the earth. That as our lives are transformed and it displays God's glory, that we want other people's lives transformed. We want the world to be transformed for God's glory. And this is not one of the commitments for the transformation pathways, but as Joanna mentioned, we want us to all sign up for City Serve. That this is a great opportunity. It reminds me of the Saturate vision that we had, or we have. And that Saturate vision, and I believe City Serve came out of that, is that we wanted to spread the knowledge of the glory of God in our city for Jesus' fame. So sign up that we would want to go to spread God's glory in our city where there's so many broken people. Even hearing about news about some suicides that happened this past week. People don't know Christ in our city. And they're hopeless, they're lost. But I believe if they just experience a glimpse of God's holiness and they saw how much this God loved them, that their life would forever be changed.
Thank you for listening to the Harvest Mission Community Church podcast. For more information, visit our website at hongkong.hmcc.net.